Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Anthropo Snip. Now, today is a little bit different, and for real, not the a little bit different that Nicholas says every single episode is a little bit different. But today's a little bit different because unfortunately, Nicholas is not able to join us. Now, he finally followed his lifelong dream of becoming a herpetology-themed stripper. So it's like where the guy comes with a bunch of reptiles and he tells you a bunch of facts and then he gets naked. No, I'm just kidding, actually. What actually happened is he is on what we like to call salamander leave. He needed a quick vacation. I was way too crazy busy last weekend for us to get together. So we're recording this now and we're just going to post it. Now, don't worry, you don't have to listen to just me drone on and on by myself for an episode because I have my good friend Francisco Romero here to join us. If anybody has followed my YouTube channel, we did a fun little video on caves. So thanks for joining us, Francisco.
Nice. Thanks, Kirstynn, and thanks everyone for joining us in this video. The habit. Thanks for joining us in this podcast. I am sorry a little bit for my accent. I am not from any country that speaks English as its native language. So I am from Ecuador. I speak Spanish, and my second language is English. So yeah, I will do my best.
You're doing great, and I think
thank you.
And just the important part is that you're trying. That's the only thing that really matters.
Yeah, that's it.
I totally understand. I mean, everybody that's listened in knows that I live in Ecuador. So when I speak in Spanish, I definitely do not have a perfect Ecuadorian accent. So it's great.
All right,
let's get into it. So today we have a little bit of genetics, a little bit of ecology, a whole lot of megafauna, and a whole lot more of people messing things up as they always do. Today we are venturing into Africa and we're talking a little bit about some impacts of poaching, which is going to be interesting. Now, poaching in itself is a whole can of worms that we're not getting into in detail in this episode because we all know that it's super difficult. It is what people consider a multi-billion-dollar industry. I'm putting in quotes because it is an industry, but that puts a really bad taste in my mouth to call it a viable business and industry. But yes, we're not going to get into that too much today. But we are going to talk a lot about some megafauna. So that's exciting. Did you want to say something?
No, actually that it is a big business around the world, just like any traffic business that is, and is also present here in Ecuador, for example, and in whole Latin and some part of Central America. We have a poaching of Tusks of jaguars, their big teeth. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a worldwide issue. I mean, a lot of times I think when you think about poaching, you automatically go to Africa. You think about poaching for rhino horns, poaching for tusks, but we can talk about poaching for jaguar teeth, for shark teeth, shark fins, and then you can also get into the trafficking of live animals, which it's just a whole big deal. But a lot of times, Nicholas and I kind of shit all over megafauna because everybody loves megafauna and they're so charismatic and nobody cares about the little guys. But why is studying megafauna interesting and important? Well, there's a couple of quick reasons here. For one, they are at risk of overharvest very easily because they're big, they need lots of space, their generation times are super long. For example, an elephant's gestation period, or the amount of time it's pregnant, can be up to 22 months. Whereas if we think about a mouse has multiple litters of multiple babies in the same year. Elephants also take a lot longer to mature, so it's just more difficult for them to be under any kind of pressure at all. We also consider them ecosystem engineers. Things that are these large megafauna, they really greatly influence the habitat and the landscape by knocking over trees, by eating saplings, by grazing, by digging, we did that quick episode on megafauna in the Arctic, how their impact of packing down snow changes the whole entire ecosystem and habitat. So they are really important. So in saying this, our overharvest paired with influence can influence the whole landscape. So when we're talking about poaching big megafauna, we're not just influencing a population, we might change everything.
Yeah, right. I just would like to add that also we have big mammals here that modulate the ecosystem with their activities. Like, for example, we have here in the Amazon and also in the coast of Ecuador, big pigs that we call them sainos. So they go and they are like big. They make big groups of them and they go after everything. They are, like when you hear a big truck coming for you, yeah, you can hear the same sound as when they are coming, because they make really big groups. They are eating everything and they are running and making noise all the time. So they are also very dangerous in the wild. So they are all the time changing everything with their movement, because they have those big feet that all the time, yeah, making everything change.
Exactly, yeah. So there's a big influence of megafauna. And yeah, I mean, we always kind of say that, we need to protect these other things and stuff, but the megafauna is really important in the landscape. And so if we take all this into account, and then from a study perspective, having these really long generation times, you don't get as quick of a change, especially if we're looking at something, spoiler alert, in evolution. So, for example, there was a study on ram horns in harvest that took literally over 37 years. They took 37 years of data to be able to come out with a good paper. Whereas if we're going to go study some Drosophila, which is fruit flies, we can get a whole bunch of information from them in a short amount of time. So this is a big deal, literally. And today we're going even bigger than rams, and we're talking about elephants. The paper from today is Ivory Poaching and the Rapid Evolution of Tusklessness in African Elephants from Campbell Staton et al. 2021. Intriguing title. Are you excited?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
All right. So at first glance, when I I think I came across this paper from an article in Scientific American, some other kind of popular science magazine. And I'm kind of like, hey, if elephants move towards tusklessness because of hunting pressure, that could be a good thing, right? It removes the pressure of hunting altogether. If you have a big old herd of tuskless elephants, then there's no reason to hunt the elephants for their tusks. Unfortunately, that is not the case, and it's quite a bit more complicated than that. So let's get into it and take a little bit of a look at what happened. They took a specific look at Gorongosa National Park and narrowed down the study to the Mozambican Civil War. Now, they did this because war tends to be really tightly interlocked with pressure on wildlife. War equals, disturbing of habitat. It also increases people's desperation, and it causes more impact from hunting. So if you're in the middle of a war, your family's starving, and someone says, hey, I'm going to give you $10,000 for an elephant tusk, you're probably going to go do it, right? So war is tied very tightly with pressure on landscapes and on wildlife. During this time, large herbivore populations in this area were reduced by more than 90%. So it's a super clear pressure. There was 90% of the large herbivores totally wiped out from this area. So this is a horrible, tragic event, but it's also a really good place to take a look at if poaching can have an actual influence on genetics, because this is such a really hard pressure.
I was just going to say that, it is amazing how war can generate more pressure on the natural resources, including animals and wildlife. So yeah, it is something kind of amazing. No? Here we have similar stories around the war with Peru or things like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just such an intense pressure. I mean, we're so self-centered as people that, war obviously is horrible on us, but it extends in the landscape and extends to wild populations. Now, the part that we start getting into here, what's going on with the tusks? What's interesting? I'm taking a quote directly here. Intensive poaching in Africa has been associated with an increase in the frequency of tuskless elephants, exclusively or perhaps nearly so among females, because there are no actual records of tuskless male elephants. There are some anecdotes, some possible stories, but no one has proved it. Now, along with this, the severe decrease in the population here was associated with a 3 times increase in tuskless females. However, caution here. Just because we see a big decline in elephants because of poaching, an increase in tuskless females, this does not automatically mean that hunting led to tuskless females, because when you get a really big reduction in a population like this, you also really reduce the genetics, and this is called a bottleneck in genetics. So there's just a good chance that the genes that survived out of these 10% were of tuskless females. So you have to go ahead and do the science and distinguish chance of the bottleneck from selection. So this is something really important to
consider. Yeah, right. This is something that you learn in your first semester of biology.
Correlation does not equal causation. I remember my statistics prof taught us that the best example I ever learned is that ice cream, the consumption of ice cream and the number of shark attacks both go up in the same months in California. But does that mean that people eating ice cream makes sharks attack people? It does not. So
yeah, oh my god, that is the best example I have ever heard about correlation. Doesn't mean, yeah. Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's a good one. So how did the scientists go about figuring out what was chance and what was selection? So they produced a model, and this model gave the same survival chances to a female that was tusked and females that were tuskless. And they ran simulations over and over again on the same time period with the same decrease in population to see in a bunch of random situations what it would look like. However, after they ran all of these models, they found out that this threefold increase in female tusks was extremely unlikely. You can go to the papers and see the actual numbers, but the models went and said, no, this is not due to chance. This doesn't make sense. It doesn't work in the numbers. So we can go ahead and say this threefold increase in tuskless females was due to poaching. Now, it turns out the actual likelihood of survival of tuskless females is 5 times of those with tusks. So together with the fact that tuskless females are 5 times more likely to survive, and this threefold increase was so unlikely under any other model, we can say that poaching has led to an increase in females without tusks. But now, where is this coming from? Pancho, do you have something to say?
I don't know. So I'm sorry. I just live in Ecuador. Yeah. I don't know.
You're not
I don't know what is going on in Africa.
This is part of the fun.
Okay, so, nice.
The authors, I'm not getting deep and dirty into the genetics for you guys, but following this, they genotyped the tusks and tuskless female morphs, and they used it against standardized genome, right? And so you line up the genome, what it should look like with the ones that are tusked and the ones that are tuskless. You do a whole bunch of genetics magic, which if you guys are interested, check out the paper. It's open access. It's beautiful. You guys can check out exactly what it was. But
a little pause to take a nap. Yeah.
No.
I am going to rest a little bit. Yeah. If anyone, I know that anyone can see my room, but I am actually recording in my room. So I have my bed right back here. Yeah, just behind me. So yeah, if anyone can join me now, I am just kidding. Yeah, sorry. I wanted to do a joke, like kind of Nicholas jokes.
It's your
yeah.
It's your first episode and you're already harassing our audience.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just want to keep on with the spirit of the podcast.
It's true. It's great. I had a little moment here where I paused because I forgot what I was doing. But what is the evolutionary response then to selection, and what does it look like? That was the main question from the authors, right? So they found that tuskless females born after the conflict were much higher than tusked females, and that the elevation was even greater than expected if there wasn't selection. So this again is saying, hey, we're getting all these females poached with tusks, and they're coming out with tusks, and it's greater than we would expect randomly. So we can go ahead and say that it's a problem. I really love this paper because the authors really took every avenue that could have said, hey, this could have been, something that we doubted, and they cleared it up really, really awesome. So we know that the hunting pressure selects for tusklessness, but where does this tusklessness come from on the genome? The authors hypothesized that it would very likely be a sex-linked trait. A sex-linked trait means it's either on the X or the Y chromosome, right? Kind of like color blindness. And because it's heritable as only seen in females. They also hypothesized that this X in males would be lethal. So meaning that if a female were to get pregnant with, and then it was a male and it had this X, the fetus either wouldn't develop or the male would die right away. And they're saying this because this was their hypothesis because no tuskless males were found. So, I think it's a pretty legit hypothesis. Hey, we're seeing tuskless females. We're not seeing tusked males. It's very likely that it's on the X, and this X will kill the male. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. It looks like it is a bad time to be a mate for an elephant around there.
Exactly. Now, they looked at it. Most daughters from tusked mothers were also tusked, and daughters from tuskless mothers were about equally tusked to no tusked. So, interestingly as well, they had this intermediate trait of some females that had only one tusk. And this happened from both tusked and tuskless mothers. So this is kind of what they ended up calling the intermediate trait. But it's super wild because usually an intermediate trait would maybe be like semi-developed tusks or something a little bit weird. But it's just literally a female with one perfectly developed tusk on one side and not on the other side. It's super wild.
Yeah, there. I would like to say that maybe this expression, this phenotype that is being expressed, is maybe due to the I don't know how to say that in English. So if you can correct me, awesome. But we call to this condition of the females mosaics or mosaicos in Spanish. So
like a mosaic.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah, it's something that happen and can be seen easily with cats, with female cats. So if you see them, they can express the male phenotype in one side of their because they have a bilateral symmetry. I don't know if I am saying that properly.
Yep.
Okay, so they have this thing, and they can express the males, their father phenotypes in one side, and the mother phenotypes in the other side. So maybe that is happening.
Right. So it could be like the bilateral symmetry, or it could be X dosage compensation, which is like the calico cats, where One X controls the color and will give the one color, and the other X controls the other color. And one X is essentially, quote unquote, turned on in one area and turned off in the other. So this is what we're seeing, possibly. The authors didn't really get into this too much, which is interesting. And it was something that they said they'd like to explore later in another paper, because I think they did a lot in this paper. But stay tuned, and hopefully we'll see something about why we're getting these one-tusked females.
Yeah, interesting. I would like to go back a little bit, and you say that females that were born without these big tusks, they also were higher. So maybe there is a trade-off thing going on there, that we know that it could happen. Because you have, it's like a compensation. Well, me and you know very well what it is. So just to explain a little bit, it is like it is the winning or the reinforcement of one trait in spite of the loss or reduction of another one. So maybe that is going on here. I don't know what you think about it, Kirstynn.
Yeah, essentially it's a trade-off, right? Like tusklessness is not ideal, because even for females who don't fight with their tusks, they dig up roots, they do a bunch of stuff, so it's a loss. But the advantage of not getting hunted and killed ends up being a lot better than not having tusks at all. So this is what we're looking at. This is a great point to bring up to make sure that we're clear about what we're talking about tusklessness in the face of poaching, right? So a female is born without any tusks, so she doesn't get hunted. So this gene, even though maybe it was kind of disadvantageous in some aspects, it was more advantageous to not get shot and killed and have your tusks sawn off than to not have tusks at all. Therefore, that gets passed on to the next generation, and that kept going. And we get this 3 times fold, because it's 5 times more likely that you're going to survive during this really stressful wartime. Exactly.
Yeah, I am definitely. Yeah, I agree with the authors.
Yeah, this is an awesome paper. I love it. Check it out. Now, they also went ahead and took a look at which, they did a bunch of tests to see which gene was most likely. And they ended up coming out with it at the end that it is very so likely that this is an X-linked dominant male lethal locus of large effect. So this X that is getting passed on from the tuskless females is really dominant. It's this X that is getting passed on from the females is giving that trait to their daughters, and it's killing the males. Now, they used a whole bunch of various techniques to narrow this down. And the important thing to note here is they did end up finding that it doesn't look like it's only just the X chromosome. So it's not passing that on. There seems to be an autosomal gene, there seems to be an autosomal chromosome involved as well. And there's a bunch of different candidate genes, and they narrowed it down, but they're going to need to do another paper and some more research to be really sure. Genetics is so nasty and so difficult. But they ended up finding out that it's for sure on the X chromosome, and then there's some influence from some other ones.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And also, I would like to add that maybe it is important to discard epigenetic factors that we know that they play an important role. Overall in young males that die. I don't know how to say that, like very early in their life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's fine. Prematurely. That die prematurely.
Exactly. That was what I was looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a bunch of factors going on, but it's just really interesting, this whole paper, because like I said at the beginning, when you first think about it, okay, elephants are getting poached for their tusks, so they're becoming tuskless. So this is great. But why is it not so great? Just to kind of recap. Well, first off, it's male lethal. So eventually you would lose all your males, and then all of the rest of the ones would die. So that's kind of like the obvious, why does this suck? But then also you have elephants are super, super important to the ecosystem. I'm going back to that vocabulary I used before, the ecosystem engineer. So their tusks they use to cultivate grasslands, they dig up trees, they push over trees, they dig up roots with them, and they do a bunch of things. They do change the landscape a bunch just without their tusks, but it is really, really important to the landscape. So not only could we possibly lose the elephants, even the herd that remains there is not going to have the same influence anymore. So no tusks is not actually a good thing. So our impacts are much more than even at face value. Face value, get it? Huh.
Okay. Nice.
Anything else to add before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, I would like to say that it's very likely that more genes that are important are being lost with all these laws, with the visible trait of the tusks being lost, because it is very likely that a lot of things are dying with it. So it also can have how do you say, like, very bad, but even worse, like terrible
like dire consequences.
Yeah, dire consequences. I like that word. So they can it can have dire consequences also on the fitness of the whole populations that are being reduced already by poaching. So they can lose genes for how do you say, like, overcome, but well, let's say overcome diseases, like deal with them, like survive to dries or to some climatic phenomena that are going on there. I don't know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. And so not only just is this tusklessness horrible because you're losing males, you're losing the impact. Also, too, females don't have as good a way to defend themselves or to defend their young, but these genes might be linked to other important genes that are important for survival. Exactly. And also to this bottleneck that we mentioned before that happens when you reduce the population so low. You get inbreeding and you can get bad genes that end up becoming dominant and passing on through generations. It's a whole bigger issue than it is. It's a whole bigger issue than it looks like, for sure. So it's really great. If you guys want to read a little bit more, the rest of the paper, it's a little bit more in depth and it's really interesting. And I can't wait to see what these authors come out with later on if they keep exploring the exact mechanisms behind this, because, at the end of the paper, they really did make a nice note that there's a lot that they're still missing and a lot that they'd really like to look at. But they did come out with this that we can, and we absolutely do, when we put this huge pressure on a population like this, cause these microevolutions, which is this like really fast, rapid evolution that happens in this small amount of time. And a lot of the times it's not a positive way, especially because we're usually hunting the biggest, fittest, best looking animals. And we're taking the really good genes out of that pool.
Yeah. Actually, it's really hard for the elephants population that are under that pressure, and but it is amazing at the same time. Look at this process, and it is also interesting how we are losing our megafauna so fast. Well, the last of our megafauna, because we have also lost a lot of it already.
Yeah, exactly. Like this just goes back to what we circle back to again and again, that conservation is so important. It's great to see that a lot of these populations of megafauna in a lot of places in Africa have recovered really greatly after these times of like civil unrest and wars. We have a long, long way to go and a lot to do. But I like to stay optimistic that we do see things recovering. The authors do have a paper as well that show after the war that the number of tusked females did start to go back up again. And it looks like the genetics are recovering. So, we screwed up and we screw up, but we can also fix it. But it's important for us to act now, right?
Yeah, that is the attitude.
Right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you liked this snip. I hope you enjoyed listening to me and Francisco chat a little bit. I'm sure you guys miss Nicholas a lot. I know I do, but don't worry. He's back in our next full episode that's coming out, which is a really exciting one. And you guys are not going to want to miss that because we have a awesome guest that came to chat with us about a depressing and interesting and amazing topic. So stay tuned for that one, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, nice. Thanks to everyone for listening to us. I am really happy for being here. I don't know if you can hear my enthusiasm coming out of my mouth, but I really was making an effort to don't explode in enthusiasm. So I hope that you really like it. Yeah, you share this with your friends, and yeah, if you I don't know if I can make a little publicitary spot about my page, Kirstynn.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna plug it anyway.
So I have a page also for I don't know, it is all about nature. Okay, so I have a lot of great contents about the diversity of Ecuador, the little diversity because I study mostly invertebrates. So there are nice, little, beautiful things, and I also publish a lot about agriculture, good practice, sustainability. So if you want to follow me, I am on Instagram as well. The name is in Spanish, so sorry, I'm going to speak in Spanish.
I will also link it in the show notes, but practice your Spanish.
So I am like naturaleza para toditos, okay, in everywhere, in Instagram and in Facebook. So check it out.
Great. Yeah, you guys go follow Francisco on his page there, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Goodbye.